All right, good morning, everybody. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Looks like the majority of people who registered are here, and we will have another one of these later on in the month, more towards the middle of the process. So, let me go to the next slide here. My name is Paul Schmitz. I'm the manager of information services here at All Chicago. We're going to cover a little context for the quarterly data quality process today. Some updates to the report, a timeline of the entire process. We're going to cover some resources and some user support. We'll walk through how to access the report. We'll take a look at some of the report. We'll also look at the what the timeliness SQL report kind of looks like. When we look at the art report that you guys can all generate, we'll look at some of those issues and troubleshoot some of the fake clients that we have floating around the system to kind of give you an idea on how to fix some of those issues. At the end, I imagine we'll have some time left over for questions, so we could cover any questions that you guys have. Just for right now, I ask that you just post them. You can just pose a question in the, you can use the chat, I'll see the chat, but it'll be easier for me to see the question if you post it as a question. So if I see the question, I'll be more than happy to do my best answering that. So first, a little housekeeping. Again, submit your questions using the question function. We have a bit to cover, but I think we'll be able to get through it. A lot of you are veterans at this process, so hopefully we'll be able to get through and answer any questions you guys might have. So there'll be another webinar on the 27th at 11. We're going to have Alex do that one. It's going to be kind of more of an open Q&A. I'll be there as well in case there's something Alex can't answer regarding this process, but he should be okay. And of course, we'll be recording this one as well as that other one, and we'll upload those to the data quality articles that we currently have on the help desk. So we have updated the report a little Monday night. So if you ran it Monday morning, you might have noticed a couple little differences. So we did add 2 columns Monday evening to clear up some of the there was some reporting on the summary page that wasn't quite clear as to where it was coming from on the assessment details page. So we'll cover that when we get to take a look at the report. It should clear things up a little bit. There is going to be a couple other things we'll have to talk about too. And of course, with any feedback you supply, we'll do our best to kind of change the report so it's a little easier to read. So for our system, we utilize a lot of data-informed approaches to help coordinate services and resources in order to be able to combat homelessness. We use the data quality. I'll go back to that page. It's an important factor to have measures to prevent this. So the COC relies on the work that we do here in order to get for a stronger system. Now, this also matters because as a coordinated entry system, the system is more interconnected now than it's ever been. So for individual clients, it's important that each agency take their data seriously because your data, the data at your agency may affect how clients are moved through the coordinated entry system to get housed. So the more everything gets more interconnected, the more data quality is important. So because of the importance of this, we take a look at these 4 values. So we look at any missing like fields in an assessment. So we'll go over that when we look at the report. We look at child-only entries because we shouldn't, unless your agency or your project is specifically for youth, then there shouldn't be any youth entered by themselves. We look at bed utilization to make sure that the beds you have are being used, or units, and that kind of depends on your project type. Then we look at timeliness. So HUD is kind of a proponent of making sure you get that information entered within a reasonable time. And all of this was discussed in the past by HMIS committee and the data quality work group. So this isn't something that like all Chicago just kind of deemed. This was something that was discussed and decided upon. So as far as who participates, anyone who enters any project that enters data into HMIS should be participating. Of course, there's going to be some exceptions. So generally, as long as a project is active and has at least 1 client enrolled, it's inspected that that the data quality report be submitted. Of course, this isn't always the case. So we do have a list of currently active projects listed. And this slide deck is one of the handouts, so the links are active. If you want to click any of these links, they'll just link to the help desk article that's relevant. If there's a project that you don't think should be on there, just let the help desk know, send an email. We can remove it from that list. Just let us know. So the timeline for the report, it's going to be looking at October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020. We're going to be using the ART report that y'all can run, and we're going to be using the SQL reports that were sent out on Monday. So the reason the SQL reports on timeliness are only sent out once is because the timeliness really can't be altered because it's recorded on the back end. So it's not something that can be changed because it's literally measuring the actual time that you entered the data in and creating a timestamp for that. The point in time date we have set for the last Wednesday in July. That's kind of to match with how the APR does it. They usually use the last Wednesday of the first month in every quarter. So it's going to look at who's enrolled or how many people you have enrolled versus how many like beds and units you guys have. So the ART report will cover any of those missing values. It'll cover child-only entries in the bed utilization, and the SQL report again will look at just timeliness. So the ART report is available. You could run that whenever you want. It's actually a lot faster than it used to be in the past. So we've tried to streamline it a little bit. So I think last time I checked, when I ran it, it ran, I think it took me from logging in to getting the report to generate about 6 minutes, which is about 3 times as fast as it was just to even get it to run in the past. So it is a lot better. But again, we did do some testing on it, but you guys, I'm sure you guys will find something that was kind of missed in the logic. So just please let us know, submit a ticket, and we'll start addressing that as we can. We've had a couple in that that's why we added those 2 columns that I'll show you a little later on. So the timeline, we've already sent the notice last week, and then we sent one on Monday, letting everybody know that kind of started. So the HMIS committee asked for another week. So instead of doing these like in a 3-week period, we kind of extended it throughout the month. So the first round of reports isn't due till October 20th. So you have a couple weeks to kind of take a look at it. We know how busy everybody is. So on the 23rd, then we'll post the first round results. And then you'll have essentially another week to make any more corrections. Now, if your first round results are great and you don't need to submit again, then you don't have to bother. You're done. You don't have to worry about it. So after the second round, we'll post it a few days later on the same website. So again, the slide deck is listed as a handout, and all these blue words here are hyperlinks, so they'll be able to get you to the help desk in that relative article. So we do have 2 articles now that are up on the help desk. One walks through the entire data quality process, and the other one goes about running and interpreting the report. There's a few other, we do have an ATA training series that's located in the LMS for any new ATAs who are kind of curious. So that there's like 4 or 5 videos there that'll walk you through essentially the general responsibilities of an ATA. Our DQ receipts, that's when you're submitting the whole the report, just to know like that you got it and your information has been processed. And then the list of agency project types we referenced earlier. So in the past, we tried doing some office hours. We only had 1 person sign up for them. So we're not going to do that this time. However, we're willing to set up any kind of like personal kind of walkthrough on any of the stuff that you guys have questions with. Just email the help desk. And if you're having trouble, we can actually set up a call. You know, we'll share with teams. We'll try to limit that to about 30 minutes. We'll do them online so we can share screens. We'd like to make sure an ATA is on. So if you're a director and you're the one who kind of goes through this stuff, or maybe a case manager, just try to have your ATA on because they're the ones who would be able to run the report and have ART access. And we'll schedule something either with me, Sal, or Alex. Most likely me or Alex right now, but we'll be able to walk you through and make sure that we answer any of the questions you may have on your report. So we do have 2 exemption forms. One's for child-only entries, and then the other one is for utilization non-compliance. So for some reason, you had construction on something, so you were down a couple units. This is one of the, you can just submit the form and we'll make sure that we track that. And then if you're a youth project and we didn't catch that in the report, you can just fill out that and we'll be able to fix that on the spreadsheet that we use. So now we're going to get into some of the live stuff. So I'll pull over Service Point to kind of walk through where to find the report. We'll look it over. I'll show you a couple of the changes we made. So give me 1 second to pull this over. Okay, so you should be seeing my Service Point now. And again, if you guys have any questions on anything we're covering, please feel free to post it in the, just go ahead and pose a question. You can send it to all or you can send it to me privately. So when you log into Service Point, this is kind of what you'll see. You want to connect to ART. And I won't run the report, but we will, I'll show you where it's at, though I guess we can run it if we wanted to, because it does run pretty quick. So it's going to be under the public folder, Chicago COC reports, and my ART might look a little different because I do have administrator access. So there might be some folders here you guys normally don't see. Then under data quality, and then Chicago DQ, and this is set in the format that we normally use. So let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. So when you submit the report, we used to have it set up that you would have to have a certain subject line and a certain title for the file. So the subject line doesn't matter anymore. So we fixed that, and we'll reference the article to kind of show you how to submit that. But the format for the file is still the same. So essentially, it's a Chicago DQ with an underscore, and then we have 4 hyphens, an underscore, and then the year, the month, and the day. So these hyphens are for your project number. So you want to make sure that if you have a 3-digit project number like 324, that you put in 0324. And then the year, and then the month and the day that you ran the report. So the one we're going to run today is going to be for the All Chicago Like Emergency Shelter. So I would have titled it Chicago DQ _ 0883 _ 2020 10 -07. The report itself, you can schedule it if you want, but let me pull my art over. And this will take a minute to kind of generate the prompt. I do want to show you guys what the prompt looks like. So while that's generating, let me show you the help desk here. So I'm going to type in data quality. And I can see a lot of things. There are some things here that are internal, but let's go to the process overview. So we've updated this to kind of show you a little bit more of the updates that we've done. So this is kind of covering what we did. So right now it has the old webinar listed from March that Sal had done. And a lot of this stuff we kind of went over on the slides, but there's a lot of links for those forms, a little talk about the timeliness report. It's got the current timeline listed. It talks about some of the compliance thresholds, utilization, but what I want to show you while we're waiting is sending the reports. So there's been a change in how we're sending these reports. So previously we used to send them to Sharon. So Sharon's on the data team here at All Chicago. So we created a separate mailbox. Reports will be submitted to dataquality@allchicago.org. It's a little easier to remember than Sharon's name. And the subject that I put here is data quality report submission attachments, but the subject actually doesn't matter anymore. So you can put whatever you want for the subject. The only thing we want to make sure is that we're still naming we're still using this naming format so that our macro can pick up that file and then run against the data inside. So please make sure that you will get if you submit successfully, you'll get an email reply saying that you have submitted successfully. If you haven't, it'll let you know that there was an error in your submission, and it's generally not the file contents, it's generally the title of the file. Okay, so this will probably take another minute. The way we have this set up now is we set up the prompts for this quarter. So all the dates, the PIT date and the date range, those are all already set up. The only thing you'll need to put in is your project ID. Now, after this data quality process, you do have options to change this date range. Okay, so whenever you decide to run the report later on, like after this month, you'll want to update any of that stuff. Now, as far as like the PIT date, that's going to be up to you for whatever you're running this for. There are a number of separate reports in ART for checking data quality, but you want to be careful on the date range you're using and your PIT date. So if you're running this, like we try to generally run this to kind of match what the APR and the CAPR do, just to have some consistency. So as you can see here, anything with a green check mark means it's already filled out for you. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. So the only thing you'll need to do is your provider. So you can see effective date is just up until what data date you want. So we always set this into the future. We just picked a random date of 2025. And then our effective date is 10/1. Our end date plus a day is 10/1 as well. And then our PIT date, we have 7/30, even though it's because we have to add a day to that. So it's actually 7/29. And then you would pick whatever report you were going to run. So you can put that number down here, hit the binoculars, and then either double click or click this arrow over here. So if I double click, it'll move it over, or if I click the arrow up here, it'll move it over too. So at that point, you would just hit run query, and this thing will take only a couple minutes to run. So we're not really worried about running this at this point. Let me pull up one that I ran already so we can take a look. Okay, so this is a report I ran for All Chicago's emergency shelter. Now, we don't have an emergency shelter. All Chicago creates a lot of fake projects in order to, it's like testing projects to make sure that everything we're doing is correct in the system, doesn't have any implications to anything else. So you can see there's like 61 entries here. All 61 of these clients are fake clients. There's no actual real data here. If this is what yours looked like, you would have a lot of stuff to kind of fix. Now, one thing I want to talk about before we get more into this report is there's this old holdover of like, this is being held against me, or compliance, non-compliance. So that all had to do with the intent to renew. And more and more, this is having, while it does have an impact, it doesn't have quite the impact that I think everybody kind of thinks it does. The whole idea about data quality is not only for your agency to make sure that any reports you submit to HUD or whatever your funders are, that your data is good and accurate, but it's also it affects the community as a whole. So when All Chicago goes to submit like the LSA, a lot of this data HUD wants to know, okay, how is this being tracked over time? So it used to be for the AHAR, which we don't do anymore. We do the LSA instead. But it's really just to make sure that it helps the continuum overall, and it also, it helps with funding overall as well. So it's not that any of this stuff is like, I think there used to be like a scoring and a scale where agencies got points on this stuff. They got rid of that as well. Now it's just part of this ITR, intent to renew, and last year it wasn't even that big of a part, and I'm not exactly sure what they're doing this year. You guys can reach out to the programs team to see what's going on with that. I know with the COVID crisis that we had this year, a lot of things have been put on hold. So I'm not sure how that is, but as far as the impact of data quality on the intent to renew, that's decided by committee. So if you're part of that committee, you'll get a say in how much that is impacting that. So this first part here is a summary for the rest of the tabs. It'll show you the applicable entries and any kind of missing values and a percentage. And then it'll also tell you like who needs what. So like a name, everybody in the system needs a name, but as far as like client location, it's only looking at the head of households. For veteran status, we're looking at all adults. You can see here as well, if we scroll down, how many child-only entries. You see this project has 18, and that's, again, these are all fake clients, so some of these are created with no information in them whatsoever. I can see that this has 33 enrolled at this point in time with 35 beds, so we met compliance there. And then this down at the bottom tells me what my report parameters were. So I'll zoom in a little bit so it's a little easier to see. And it tells me my project type as well. So let's move over to the assessment details tab, because this is where people will start getting confused because there's so many different things here. So let's go down to the key first, the legend down here. So make sure you're taking a look at this because this will help tell you what everything means. Each of the columns are listed and essentially what things are. So a lot of these have like strike throughs, like this down here, place not meant for human habitation, because it's not something that we're looking for because we're looking at the head of households, right? So you want to look and make sure that just because you see red, if there's a strike through on it, then you can ignore it. So you can see there's a lot of nulls here, but they all have strike throughs, so you can ignore them. So I'm going to show you a couple of the columns we added. So we added this column here, column J, for Social Security number errors. So what Social Security number is looking at, it's looking at two things. It's looking for a Social Security number, and it's looking for that data quality question attached to it. So you can see a lot of them say okay, but then you see one down here that says approximate or partial SSN reported. So what this is looking at, and I'll go over to the summary tab and show you up here as well. When I see Social Security number and missing values, if all of those are okay, then you're fine. But if it says approximate, it's going to pull an error if there's actually no number in the field, right? So if you say approximate or partial, it wants to see an approximate or partial Social Security number, right? So the last 4 digits or whatever it is. So if that's blank, then your data quality question of approximate or partial is incorrect. So then that's what's it's gonna alert you and let you know. So you can see here null, right? So if you have a null here, then odds are it's going to tell that there's, the data quality is off as well. And we can take a look at some of these clients in the system to kind of show you how that's set up. So the other one we set up as well, the same logic held true for domestic violence. So if a client had like yes for domestic violence, you could still, without this column Monday morning, it would still show here that you had a missing value, but it wouldn't exactly tell you why. So we added this column that gave the time, because the logic is looking at, if you say yes, then you probably should be answering the next question, which is, when the experience occurred. So we added this column. You can see it wasn't filled out for a lot of these particular clients. You can see here, I'll zoom in a little in case you can't see. Here, someone answered yes, and it was like 0 to 3 months, so that's fine. But if someone answered yes down here, but they didn't answer for how long, so it's showing up null. So a lot of these are kind of going to show up that way. There may be some other issues back here. So here are where all the sub-assessments are, and this is generally where all the issues, these are the most difficult issues to kind of fix. So anybody who's done data quality in the past knows that it's the sub-assessments really that are kind of odd. So one of the issues we kind of saw was some of the issues at exit, and that's only if a client was immediately transferred to another project at the same agency. Because those entries and exits are on the same day, there could be kind of an overlap in time, because this is looking at like data on that day. So if you're having an issue with like an exit, like non-cash it exit, and you don't see anything, then just feel free to submit a help desk ticket. We're more than happy to look into it, because it could just be that there's a conflict with an entry that same day. So we're going to look at a couple of these, just randomly kind of go through and see. So let me bring up my service point. And again, so we'll do this in the live site, but none of these clients are actual clients. So I'm gonna pull one up with that Social Security issue. So I'm kind of zooming in and zooming out on Service Point. I hope it's easier for you guys to see. Service Point's not a big fan of zooming in and zooming out. So if you're having issues working within Service Point, make sure that you're at a default view, because that could cause some issues. So I'm going to pull up this client, and this client is Rocky Balboa. He also has a son. He's also in another family. And you'll see these all have random, for the most part, these test clients have random enrollments into all sorts of projects. So you may see your project listed here, but it's because we're testing something there. When it comes to any of the reporting, our reports are set to pull out test clients, so you guys shouldn't see them. If you do see one, it'll be blatantly obvious because they'll have some weird celebrity name. Just let us know and we'll take a look at the report to see if something was overlooked. So we are going to look at a couple of things on this client. Just looking right now, I can tell there's stuff missing. Like I can see gender and race is missing, date of birth, social security number. So I'm gonna go to the client profile and see what we got here. So he's got approximate here, but again, you see like this recurring number, this is gonna pop up an error because it doesn't quite meet what the Social Security Administration has set for a valid Social Security number. So you can't really have a consecutive number, and that's why it's gonna flag. Now, you kind of want to put it whatever, like if it is approximate, then you want to put what the approximate is. Otherwise, I mean, essentially, it's what this, if you're just throwing in all sixes or all zeros, then it's really data not collected, right? So I can see that that's kind of off. My name data quality is fine, full name reported. If for some reason I put like data not collected, but I have a name there, it should flag as well. And then veteran, yes or no, this is where you fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. Now, I do see client demographics here. This is not where you want to edit them. Like client demographics here, it's showing you, but this will mess up any of the timestamps in your assessments. So you don't want to edit them here. You edit them through the assessment. So any household issues I can see here. You never want to exit someone out of a household. Households are system-wide. So if you exit someone out of a household or remove them from a household, it will affect any other project that person is in. So do not exit people from households. They can be in 100 households. It's not going to matter. Just pick the one that's relevant at the time that they're coming for help. You can see there's a whole bunch of ROIs listed because we're just testing things out. And then I'll go into my entry because, like I said, we are going to look at his 883. So I'll click on the pencil, and this guy had a lot of issues. Now I'll be able to just see them because I'm so used to going through this. So everybody can see. Okay. So here's my entry, my assessment here. You can just clicking on it, clicking away because these are recommended. I can tell what I'm missing already. This is going to show up on the report: date of birth type, ethnicity, gender, race. So we do have this alert if you don't fill everything out. So it's an easy way of getting into the assessment and leaving. But I can see here that almost nothing is answered. So of course that's going to cause all sorts of issues. So any of those issues that you see here, so like relationship to head of household, because this client has no information here, the system's going to think this is a child-only entry. So this has to at least be self. Now, if someone from the household was removed from the household, and like if this was a child and they had and this was let me just change this to here. So if this child was with the head of household and the head of household for some reason was removed from the household, then this would show up as a child-only entry as well. So if you're missing a relationship to head of household, it's going to show up as a child-only entry, or if the household was altered. So also, this date of birth is missing. So if the date of birth is missing, that's going to show up as a child-only entry as well. So you got to make sure you have a date of birth. The ethnicity and gender, again, in the report will just kind of show you if the field's missing or not. The big thing that you guys are going to see and you're going to have questions on, and I think there are a couple tickets even right now sitting in the help desk. Oh, there's a question here. How do you determine which assessment has the error? So, okay, so the question is, before I get into prior living situation, how do you determine which assessment has the error and requires correction? Okay, good question. So let me pull up the report again. So your projects are set up to default to specific assessments. So your entry assessment should already be determined. The update assessment, that can change, right? Generally it's update, but for some projects, whenever they were set up, oh geez, like 7 years ago, whoever set them up at All Chicago may have defaulted to annual assessment, but generally it's just update, and then there's an exit assessment, right? And there's some follow-ups, but we're not measuring any of that here. So what you want to do is look up at the top here as far as where the errors are. So here I have a client ID. That's just the ID you can look up the client with. Then you have an entry exit ID. So these are all unique. These are on the back end. It's not really anything you guys can, I'm gonna zoom in so you guys can see better. It's really not anything that you guys can do anything with, but it actually, what it does is the system creates individual numbers to track enrollment, right? So sometimes if a client has the same name or multiple enrollments into one project, each one of those is uniquely identified with a number. So it's going to show me my entry date, my exit date, first and last name. Now, first, last name, name, date, equality, social security number, and veteran, that's all corrected in the client profile. Everything else on here is corrected in an assessment. So date of birth, that's in the assessment, race, ethnicity, gender. Now this is all looking at the entry assessment. And then same with prior living situation, length of stay, approximate date homelessness started. We're going to cover these number of times, number of months, because that's where I'm seeing a lot of tickets come in. And then everything else is kind of specific. So it'll say disability at entry. Okay, so my entry assessment, this client has an issue with disability. Oh, it's fine at entry, but there's one at exit that's wrong. So then I'd have to go into my exit assessment. Now, some of these clients don't have exits, so some of these will just have little hyphens in them. But for the most part, aside from what you see on the client profile, and let me go back to the client profile. So when I say client profile, this says your client profile, but there's actually a client profile tab as well. So that's all what you're you can edit all of that name, date, equality, social security number, and veteran, all here. Now it has an age listed, but that's not something when we go to edit that we can actually edit. So all of those have to be corrected here. Everything else is in the assessment. If you're wondering which assessment, you can say, like if I go into this project, the Ending Veterans Homelessness Initiative, which is no longer participating, I can see that they have a project start date here, so I can click on this pencil to get into the entry assessment. I can also, if it's an error at exit, I can click on this. If it's an error at like an update or something, like an annual assessment, now we don't have that on the state equality report. However, you will see those on APRs and CAPERs. Then you can look at the interim updates, because generally you would see, like if you click on it, it would say like annual review or something, okay? So, and generally that has to do with head of household and when they were, it was actually created. So if you have to fix something at an entry, you're going to click at the project start. You'll hit save and continue. And it's going to default you to the entry, because you have all these assessments here. And because this is an all Chicago project, we kind of overdo it with the assessments that each project has. So it should default to the one that you need to correct. You can go to others by clicking on them here, but there's really no reason to, because that's just it's gonna keep the date. So I'm just gonna hit no there. So I hope that answers the question, because if we go into here, I'll go up to I'll show you the exit too. So this particular client doesn't have an exit for that project, but we'll just pick this one. So I can already see that this is going to give me an error if I ran it on this project, because there's no reason for leaving. And it should highlight data not collected, but if your data is not collected, that's fine. That's a valid answer. So some of these are valid answers. They're still going to be like pink, because HUD's cool with these answers, but they don't want to see like 100 of them. Like if you have 50 clients and 25, 30% of them are data not collected, when you submit, your HUD rep might ask why. Like, hey, well, what's going on here? Why? How are you having trouble, getting these answers? So there's another question. Not all of the red highlighted cells in the assessment tab are included in the number of percentage missing data in the summary tab. How can we tell which ones need to be addressed? Okay, so essentially what we are showing you here is information that you're going to want to collect for your client. But again, you want to look at the stuff that's listed here on the summary tab. So veteran status, right? Because a lot of this stuff may have an impact on coordinated entry. None of your reports should look like this. This one's insane, because it's all fake clients that no one really finished making. But on this assessment detail stuff, the stuff that you definitely want to fix is stuff that doesn't have a strike through, right? Because that stuff is fine. It's not being looked at. The pink stuff, for the most part, let's go down to the legend down here. So it's telling you, like, either you can see it's either null, so it means it's blank, or there's a value, or data is not collected. That's what DNC means, right? So in some cases, this null value is okay, and I'll show you that, and that has to do with the prior living situation stuff that we were talking about. But in other cases, like with HUD or mismatch, you want to make sure that those are accurate. And those you're going to see for the most part in the sub-assessments. And that's why they're a little darker red to distinguish. But you can, I don't know if you can see, let me zoom in a little bit more. So this null here in the highlighted cell has a strike through. So it's saying, yeah, you're kind of missing a value there, but it's not necessary for this particular client. And for the most part, that's true because they're a child, and usually a lot of the data that's being collected is around the head of household or an adult. Does it matter if we choose data not collected versus client refused? I think they're categorized the same. HUD accepts all of your answers. One, they just want an answer, right? That's the most important thing. And then when it comes down to this, if there's a high number of these, it really is up to the HUD rep and whether or not they want to follow up with you. Like I would imagine like a good HUD rep would ask like whether or not like would ask you that question, right? They would ask like they'd ask why to make sure that everything's going okay. But it really is going to be up to the HUD rep. So like again with this particular report, it's more for it's more to kind of make everyone aware. By the way, this is what you have. Like this is what you're looking at. Again, whether or not you fix them is up to you. This is more because it will impact overall. the systems like data quality that's reported like in the LSA, but the people who did the LSA for all Chicago last year are no longer here. So the LSA kind of starts on like the 19th. So right now we've been kind of looking at some of that data, but we don't have an exact idea of what we're going to be doing. Let's see, there's one other question here. I mean, 3 missing values for an element in the summary tab. It has over 50 highlighted cells. So we can just submit a ticket and we can talk about that. Carrie, yeah, feel free to, unless you already have that ticket, because we're going to talk about, yeah, okay, we're going to talk about that because I saw your ticket. So we're going to talk about like that approximate date, homelessness started number of times, because that has to do with how the vendor coded things, and that limited us in how we can express the logic. Okay, and Levon, we're going to talk about the approximate date homelessness started, because not all of them need it. A lot of it has to do with conditional logic and whether or not something's showing. Okay, I'm just going through what else we have here. Okay, so let's talk about these columns here, because you're going to see a lot of these. So approximate date homelessness started, like this whole chunk here with chronic homelessness. So it's essentially prior living situation, length of stay, approximate date homelessness started, number of times, number of months. So this all kind of falls back onto this chronic homelessness and its conditional logic. So the conditional logic is set so that, and we have an article on it, like if you answer one question a certain way, other questions will pop up. Now, actual conditional logic will, in reality, will pop these questions up because it's dependent on another one. WellSky, I don't want to talk bad about the vendor, but the way they coded it was it's just hidden. So you just can't see it. The questions are always there. So in some of these assessments, and I'll go into the entry assessment so I can show you, because this is because the emergency shelters are a little different because they have a different assessment. So for emergency shelters, they're kind of already there, right? So there are going to be issues where, like if it's looking at housing status, if you put homeless and prior living situation is a homeless situation, it's going to pop up some of these other questions because it wants to know. For emergency shelter, they're already kind of populated. Now, for what you're going to see is, and let me go to the other assessment. I think I have it listed here. So the HUD COC ESG entry, all other projects, which is what most projects have, that's where the conditional logic lies. So you can see here, I have prior living situation. So let me just put it to blank. So if I change, so if I'm going through with a client and they say, oh yeah, okay, I'm currently homeless, and what was your prior living situation? And they say one of these homeless situations here, so place not meant for human habitation, emergency shelter, safe haven. By selecting one of those, all these questions pop up. So approximate date, all that stuff. Now, if you choose, like say they were in a like foster care or something, or any of the institutional ones, you see that question disappeared. Now, it only disappeared from view. It's still there and it's still recording an answer. So if any of you submitted APRs back in January, the vendor was having trouble with this in that report as well. So a lot of these questions were popping up as errors. So the way because if they coded it that way, it dictated how our logic had to be for this report. So if you have homeless, let me go back to one of these. So you can see they're all kind of dependent So I say stably housed, but the prior living situation was a place not meant for human habitation, because this is determining whether or not those questions are visible, right? So they're always being recorded. So when you're looking at the report, you want to look at housing status, you want to look at prior living situation, because that's going to tell you whether or not you actually need an approximate date homelessness started, the number of months, and that kind of thing that is on this report here. So if I look at prior living situation and I see like that this right now, it's I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. So this is all it's struck through. So that means this stuff here in pink, it's struck through too, because we don't, it's not being recorded, but it's not something that's going to be reported on. And that probably has to do with their relationship to head of household, which in this case says head of household's child. So that's not something they're looking for. So what if a client is homeless and stays with a family member, like in a family member's room? So you're saying their housing status was homeless, and let's go down here, staying. So it's going to be dictated on the prior living situation. So if they're staying or living with a family member, are they, again, this is trying to determine chronic homelessness. So if they're already staying here, you have to kind of determine like how that, you know, if that's a break in homelessness, right? So if they're actually staying with a family member, then odds are they're probably at imminent risk, right? So you want to make sure that these questions are essentially like cohesive, like they're in agreement with each other. Because you don't want to say, oh yeah, they're stably housed. Where did you stay last? You know, oh, I live in an abandoned building. Well, that's not stably housed. Like that's not their housing status, right? Um, right. So you're asking if they couch surf, right? Um, that's a little trickier, right? But it really has to do with that chronic homelessness definition, right? So you want to make sure that you're asking them how long they've been in that situation, get the number of times, right, over the course of like, you know, if they have 12 months of homelessness over, I think it's the last 3 years. Um, that's all stuff you have to ask to determine whether or not, you know, which one of these, because it sounds like if they're just couch surfing that they're still at risk, because you'll have to ask whether or not like how long are you going to be able to do this, right? So the you want to look at the justification between these questions to whether or not you need to answer that these need to have an answer. So if prior living situation is a homeless situation, then it's going to want to know these. So one of the things you can do on this report is just filter it down. So when I'm helping fix some data issues for everybody, if they have issues here, then I'll go through and select some of the things in a filter, so I can see, okay, so this person here has emergency shelter, and they have some nulls here. Well, because it's one of the homeless situations, then I know that, okay, I definitely have to fill this out. So this client is missing information, whoever this particular client is. This client's name is 12341234, right? So they're missing a lot of, they're also missing a household, social security number. There's so much stuff going on with this client. We only have like a minute or so left. So let me, I do want to cover I do want to quickly show the other report that we send out, the timeliness report. So this is a fake one, but essentially this is, here's a summary here, but this is going to tell you how many days it took between when you entered the information and the day and what you entered. So if for some reason a client enrolled in your project on 1/1, but you didn't put 1/1 in the system until 3/1, then you're going to have that time between when you actually entered it and the date you put in is going to be that timeliness issue, because you want to have, we have an article, I think it's like 2 days for some projects, up to 7 days for some other projects, to enter some of this data. So this is showing some of the time it took between in the date that you entered and when you entered it. So I can see here for this particular project, for the housing move-in date, that it took this person 32 days because the housing move-in date they entered was in June, but they actually didn't enter it until July, right? Now, if this is more of HUD's encouragement to make sure you're entering it timely so that the information is as up to date. And again, right now, all of this information is just to kind of give you an idea as to just make you guys aware, like, and doesn't have much to do, like, we're not, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I don't want to get dinged for this, I don't want to get dinged for that. But that's not what we're looking here. This is more just to kind of make everybody aware. So we are out of time. I think we covered most of everything. Yeah, we reviewed reports. We did some troubleshooting on some things. So we'll go ahead and end it now. If you have any further questions, please submit them to the help desk. You guys know my email as well, so you can send me an email if you want. If you want to meet to go over any report, please let us know. Alex and I will set up something with you. I'm not seeing any more questions. If I missed your questions, please send me an email. Let me know. I tried to get through all of the ones. I thought I read them all. So thanks everybody for showing. Sorry for going over a little bit. I actually thought we'd finished a little early, but good questions. Again, please feel free to submit any more questions to the help desk. All right, thanks everybody.